beautiful.
Hello, lovers of the world. This is Cinta speaking. I love listening to new music. It's really fun to find new things to obsess over, whether that's a new album, a new artist, or a new song. I'm always trying to chase that sense of joy and triumph of finding something new to love. It is once again time to reflect and rank every musical project that I listened to in the last month. As you can see, we are back on the same tier list but with new additions to rank. I want to keep all of the previous things that I ranked in the same list so that I can compare it to everything that I rank from this point onwards. Usually before ranking, I explain my tier list rules and the grading system behind it, but this video script was pushing 6,000 words, so I've decided to omit them for now to save us some time. And if you want to know what they are, you're welcome to watch my last What I Listened to This Month video. But hopefully the tier list names are self-explanatory enough that you can still keep up if you don't. My reviewing style relies entirely on how I feel about an album. I don't have any musical theory background and I know very little about music production. However, if I know nothing else about music, I at least know how it makes me feel. I've also added timestamps in the description in case you want to skip to a specific album. In the beginning of January, people kept making these corny jokes about having a happy new year in 2015 instead of 2025, and it made me laugh every time, but it also inspired me to listen to albums that came out in 2015 and reflect on how they basically turned 10 years old this year. So you'll notice throughout the year that there is a significant preference for albums that were released in 2015. As I talk about each album, just know that the order in which I talk about them is the order in which I listen to the album in, if that makes sense. But now that that's out of the way, let's get into what I listened to in February. So first, I listened to Eusexua by FKA Twigs. This was released in 2025. FKA Twigs, also known as Talia Debret Barnett, is an English singer, songwriter, record producer, and dancer. She released her first studio album in 2014, and this is her third album. This is my first FKA Twigs project. I've heard a lot of her songs in the past, but never a full project before, so I was really excited about it. It's always hard to reflect on an album when it's the first from that artist that you've heard of, because I feel like I am missing out on a lot of context from their past work. But I definitely did my best when I was listening to Eusexua. FKA Twigs has done a lot to introduce her new creation, this concept of Eusexua, which in her words, taken from this interview, is a word that I made up because I kind of realized that there wasn't a word in the English language, at least, that described this feeling. It's a moment of pure human experience. It's a moment of clarity. It is for me the moment before an amazing idea. It's the moment before an orgasm. It's the moment when you're kissing someone, you're not in love, you're egoless, you expect nothing, but in that moment, they're everything to you. There's another interview clip I've linked in the description alongside that other interview if you want to hear from her words exactly, but the album had been inspired by FKA Twigs' time immersed in Prague's techno rave community and how she had been able to heal from past trauma she had through the intense clubbing parties that she went to. And that's really the best way to describe the album, framing the club as a place of peace, a place to find comfort in the chaos and connection in anonymity. This is pretty much what the songs Girl Feels Good, Room of Fools, and Perfect Stranger are about. I am jumping ahead a little bit, but I did listen to Caprisongs directly after this. After listening to Caprisongs, I think it's very telling that the biggest themes in that album is this recovery from these intense emotional entanglements with her past romantic partners. Therefore, it makes complete sense to me that she sways in the complete opposite direction in this next project and instead favor or seek out sexual and intimate relationships with strangers instead, because they lack that inherent threat commonly found in these committed relationships. So this freeing revelation that FKA Twigs has is the key point in tracks like Eusexua, Perfect Stranger, and Sticky. Given the title of the album, many of the songs predictably also talk about sex. There's a BDSM vibe undercurrent throughout the album, but it's the strongest in the track 24-Hour Dog. It speaks to how the act of relinquishing one's agency is in itself an act of agency. My favorite song is still Drums of Death. I was completely obsessed with it when it was teased last year, and it's easy to see why it was basically the first song from Eusexua unveiled to the world, since it was technically played first in the Eusexua music video when FKA Twigs is doing her cunty office siren choreography. I also honestly liked Childlike Things, except I don't really understand why Northwest specifically was involved or as the featured vocalist. I think it could have been anyone. Actually, in the beginning, when I was listening to the album, I wasn't paying attention and I actually assumed that it was still FKA Twigs singing Northwest's part. So I just not really sure why they were involved in the project. The only explanation I can think of, aside from, nepotism and maybe FKA Twigs' connection with the Kardashians, is that since Northwest is literally a child, then it does make sense for her to sing on the track Childlike Things. And I also really enjoyed the closer track Wanderlust. So even though it is just the start of the year, I firmly believe that this album is one of the best that the year has to offer. So I am putting this in year-end list material. And then I listened to Caprisongs by FKA Twigs. So like I said, I listened to this directly after I listened to Eusexua, as this was the last project that FKA Twigs worked on before releasing Eusexua. And I really should have listened to this first, then listened to Eusexua, but I was just so excited for Eusexua that I just jumped straight into it. So Caprisongs was recorded in the aftermath of her leaving her abuser Shia LaBeouf, and I think around the time that she was making this, she was also dating Maddie Healy of the 1975. Given the fact that FKA Twigs and Shia LaBeouf are still embroiled in a vicious court battle, it's safe to assume that the trauma that FKA Twigs referred to in that TikTok interview stemmed from this relationship. In the first track of Caprisongs, FKA Twigs calls the project a mixtape, and it certainly sounds like it, in the sense that there is a lot of voices and conversations, snatches of discussions of her sharing her thoughts, that gives the project a very intimate and homemade feel. The voices are clearly people close to her trying to show support and uplift her after a trying time. By weaving in these messages from family and friends, the songs are held together by these threads of joy and support one receives from one's community. Because of that, it kind of breaks the flow that you expect from a typical pop album, and it's kind of hard to see a song from the track list become a specific radio single, aside from maybe Tears in the Club. Tears in the Club is the best single to release from the album because out of all the tracks, I believe it fits the stereotypical song structure we expect. Plus, it also features The Weeknd, who is undoubtedly one of the biggest musicians of the world right now and would definitely pull listeners in. But honestly, I really like Tears in the Club because it's a sentiment and a situation a lot of people can relate to. Who amongst us has not been in tears at the club? Cast the first stone, right? There is something kind of absurd about crying in the club as well. Not only because to me, it reminds me of this specific meme that is probably a decade old at this point, but the juxtaposition of partaking in a hedonistic activity such as clubbing while you're hampered by melancholy to the point of tears is just funny. But moving on to the rest of the album, some key songs for me are Meta Angel. This is a track about pleading for help to a higher being, praying for guidance from someone wiser and more powerful. And I really like how in this context, that higher being ends up being FKA Twigs' friends, because their spoken word messages are woven not just throughout the track, but of course throughout the project. They're hyping her up, they're encouraging her to look forward to not just the future, but what she could become in the future as well. So at the end of the day, her pleas for someone to look after her are answered. I also thought the track Oh My Love was very interesting. I like the spoken word parts there too, about people wanting to steal your youth, encouraging FKA Twigs to enjoy her golden years. And of course, this is obviously a reference to, a very tumultuous, relationship she had in the past. And so that was very touching. The album also reflects about FKA Twigs' career, such as in the track Darjeeling, where she muses about her past and how far she's come along. Not just a long career of singing, but dancing and also modeling. It's a reflection of FKA Twigs' career as a performer and how that has impacted the way she navigates life and relationships. Caprisongs is an honest documentation of FKA Twigs' journey to rebuild her self-esteem after a very harrowing traumatic experience. So I found this very moving and very insightful and mature and sophisticated. Despite the heavy subject, I felt very close to FKA Twigs, and I felt like she was able to articulate very heavy and complicated feelings really well while still making a very entertaining album. So I'm gonna put this straight into French Toast. And then I listened to Get Weird extended version by Little Mix. This was released in 2015. Little Mix are an English girl group that formed on the 8th series of The X Factor in 2011. The X Factor is a reality singing TV show. The group consisted of Leanne Pinnock, Jade Thirlwall, Perry Edwards, and originally Jessie Nielsen before her departure from the group in 2020. This is the group's third studio album, and I picked this because it was released in 2015 and because Perry Edwards and Jade are pursuing their solo careers, several years after the band had split up. I was really intrigued by their solo output so far, and I wanted to know what their music sounded like prior to their solo work. So I don't actually remember hearing Little Mix as much on the radio growing up as much as the other reality show crafted groups like One Direction and Fifth Harmony, or if I did, I wasn't aware that they were the ones singing it, which is the case for the singles off this album, Black Magic, Love Me Like You, and Secret Love Song. I kind of found the album corny sometimes. There's a lot of teeny bopper doo-wop vibes throughout the project that wasn't for me, but I understand that I wasn't who they were catering to because it was really obvious who their target demographic was given the album's lyrics, so which was obviously tween girls. Very, Disney Channel vibes, and that's not necessarily a it's just that I'm 26 years old. And the lyrics are also excellent time capsule for this era of pop culture where this surface level flavor of feminism dominated the mainstream that just feels outdated to a listener in 2025, especially if this is my first time listening to a lot of these songs. So while I wasn't particularly obsessed with most of the songs on the album, I can't help but be swayed by the sheer vocal talent that the girls have. They are practically screaming in my ears, especially in the ballads, and they just have buckets of charisma, and I just really want to appreciate that. So I'm just gonna put this in Gems Found in the Mind. My favorite songs are Black Magic, OMG, and Clued Up. And then I listened to Messy by Olivia Dean. This was released in 2023. Olivia Dean is an English neo-soul singer who started releasing music in 2019. While she has released 5 EPs in the past, Messy is her first studio album. The album is very lover girl coded music to me, very cozy, very sweet, very romantic, and idyllic. Olivia Dean was one of the performers for the 2025 Laneway Festival in Auckland, and I only managed to listen to this album one time before I attended the festival and saw her perform there, and she was a great performer. I definitely feel like I liked the songs more after Laneway because of her charisma as a live singer, and of course because of the memories of being in the crowd of her show with my friends. So my favorite songs are Dive, Ladies Room, and Hardest Part. I'm gonna put this in Gems Found in the Mind. And then I listened to Gestures Bean by They Are Gutting a Body of Water. This was released in 2018. They Are Gutting a Body of Water, or TAGABOW, is an American shoegaze band from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania that formed in 2017. I kept hearing a lot about this band, so I just went to see what the fuss was all about, and I chose their debut album because it just seemed like a good place to start, and I enjoyed it to a certain extent. I definitely preferred the songs like Fake 20, Jada Kiss, and Yawner. They just felt more dynamic and had peaks and valleys, unlike the slower paced songs like Daytime Europa Stuff, Houseplant, and Calorie. I wasn't really a big fan of those. They skew too much to slacker rock for my personal taste, and I'm starting to find that I'm not really a big fan of slacker rock or slowcore as they get under my skin in a way that makes me feel too lethargic and aimless. So I don't really like that style of music so far. So I definitely preferred the more shoegaze adjacent songs more so than the slacker rock slowcore songs. So I'm gonna put this into French Toast. And then I listened to Reflection by Fifth Harmony. This was released in 2015. Fifth Harmony was an American girl group composed of Ali Brooke, Normani, Dinah Jane, Lauren Girogi, and formerly Camila Cabello until her departure from the group in December 2016. The group was originally formed after competing in the second season of the singing competition series, The X Factor, in 2012. So the group has been inactive for a long time, and it's definitely had its lion's share of scandals and controversies over the years that they were active and even the years after they were active. I honestly did not have a lot of high expectations for this album because I did indeed live through the group's most active years, and none of their songs at the time, the singles, were impressive enough for me to actually follow them while the group was active. They were the kind of artist that I just felt existed in the background while I did my own thing. So why did I suddenly decide to listen to their debut album after 10 years? Well, first, this album was released in 2015, so it fit my challenge. Second, given that I just finished listening to Little Mix's album, the idea of comparing the two groups' output seemed really obvious to me. Third, I listened to Normani's debut album Dopamine last year and was sufficiently impressed by her potential as a solo artist, so I wanted to see what she was like while she was in the girl group. And lastly, I also wanted to listen to Camila Cabello's album from 2024, XOXO, which was a critically panned commercial flop. So all of these little curiosities pushed me into giving this album a shot. And when I finally cracked into this album, the album kind of blew my mind a little bit, which I didn't expect. Now that my taste for pop music has solidified in my big age of 26, I can unironically say that I really like a good amount of the songs of the album. My strong favorites are Reflection and Top Down. They are cheeky, confident staples of a pop girl's repertoire that I wholeheartedly embrace. I also love Everlasting Love, which is a sweet and fun pop R&B sound that was popular at the time and is also what Ariana Grande was doing at the time. Like Mariah is also really cute. I love that it sampled Always Be My Baby, which is a great song, by the way. Going Nowhere is also really good. So I think I could have only listened to this now that I'm older. I don't think if I listened to this when I was in 2015 when it came out, I don't think I would have appreciated it for what it is. But sometimes things have a way of working out. I honestly have no qualms with putting this in French toast. So in my videos, I always encourage people to suggest albums for me to listen to in the comments section. So I finally went through my comments from the past and tackled what viewers have recommended. Now, I'm not sure if the original commenters will be here to see me react or respond to their original comments. It took me a long time to get around to it. I'm really sorry. But let it be said that I do listen to suggestions. I do. Even if I do it late. I just do them late. I'm sorry. But I will, and from this point onwards, I will be a lot more onto it when it comes to these suggestions. So after listening to Reflection by Fifth Harmony, I listened to Dummy by Portishead. This was released in 1994. And a few months ago on my 1998 birthday listening project video, someone suggested I try Portishead before I write off trip hop for good. So thank you to that commenter for suggesting this. Portishead are an English electronic band formed in 1991 in Bristol. I did not realize that this band was where Beth Gibbons came from. I know her album was critically acclaimed last year, but I never got around to listening to it, so apologies for that. But yeah, I never knew that that's where Beth Gibbons came from. Now, to say that there is an intense whiplash going from Fifth Harmony pop girl dance music to Portishead trip hop is a severe understatement, especially because I literally listened to them back to back in the same night. Like directly after I finished Reflection, I said that was really cool. I listened to Portishead directly after. Guys, I'm so scared of this album. At first I wasn't sure how. I was trying to figure out what it was that like terrified me about the sound or the experience that I was experiencing. First, I thought it was like how sparse the instrumentation was, getting under my skin. But as the album progressed, I felt increasingly anxious, claustrophobic, and unsettled. And I wasn't sure if this was the intended response, but I can't say that I enjoyed the feeling too much. I felt like I was supposed to be like super relaxed and chilled out because Beth Gibbons' voice is very soft and feminine. You know, technically the instrumentation is very minimal. Like there's only very few instruments in the actual song, but I just felt so on edge and I couldn't articulate why. It was like something bad was gonna happen. It was like somebody was following me, but every time I turn to look around, nobody is there. So terrifying. And I've never felt this way about a piece of music before. So I can almost like respect the album for being able to elicit such a visceral and primal reaction from me. But again, it's not really something that I want repeated. I did listen to the album a few times to make sure that it wasn't just my brain tricking me, or like it wasn't just the whiplash of going from a super pop album to whatever the hell this was. But as the saying goes, art is meant to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. So consider me successfully disturbed. I don't remember feeling this level of anxiety when I listened to Mezzanine. I think Mezzanine, from my memory, was a lot more upfront with its negative feelings in the way that, I don't know, the instrumentation was built up. Whereas in this album, everything just felt like this anxiety was simmering and hidden, which kind of makes it 1,000 times scarier because you don't know where the danger is coming from. Let me know if you love Portishead, if this makes sense to you, or if I'm talking nonsense, but I tried my best to articulate how I felt. Now, the thing is, I can't even say that I hated the album because I feel like that implies, I don't know, even though I was discomforted, I really just appreciate any kind of piece of music or any art that can make me feel something completely new and different and teach me something completely new and different. So I'm gonna put this in, at least I learned something new, because I definitely did. So moving on to the next album I listened to Everything Harmony by the Lemon Twigs. This was released in 2023. So last month I posted a video that reviewed the Lemon Twigs' 2024 album A Dream Is All We Know, saying that I enjoyed it, but it was a bit too sugary sweet. And someone in the comments kindly suggested that I listen to the album they released before that, which is this, Everything Harmony. And I definitely like this a lot more than A Dream Is All We Know. This just feels a lot more down to earth in comparison to the fantastical but again overly sweet vibes of A Dream Is All We Know. But I don't think that it completely changed the way I feel about the band. I still feel the same in the sense that I don't see myself reaching for their music on a normal day. And it's a sound that I can handle or appreciate in moderation, but just not in heavy rotation. I am gonna put this in French toast because it is such a pleasant listen. And even if I feel like this didn't completely rock my world, I want to honor the good vibes that the album brings to the table. So my favorite tracks are When Winter Comes Around, In My Head, What You Were Doing, and Ghost Run Free. Fun fact, I did actually recommend Everything Harmony and A Dream Is All We Know to one of my friends who I think will appreciate this nostalgic 70s vibe that the band is so adept at recreating. And then I listened to Madonna's self-titled debut album, Madonna, that was released in 1983. In my September 2024 video, someone in the comments suggested a Madonna tier list ranking video after I reviewed Ray of Light, which is an absolutely inspired idea. So even though I started off with Ray of Light, I thought the easiest way to approach this discography deep dive would be to just start with her first album and just work my way there. And so I started off with this. I thought this was fun and cute. Nothing that rocked my world in particular, and nothing that I found too different, but it could be because Madonna has done so much to trailblaze pop music that this doesn't feel new or innovative to me, given that I was born into a post-Madonna world, and that's all I'll ever really know. I won't really ever understand what pop music was like before Madonna. That's just something that I have to keep in mind when I pursue the rest of this discography deep dive. I'm also not super familiar with the landscape of the Western 80s pop music world when this debut album came out, so I'm not really sure how the album fit into its time period, whether it stood out or whether this was just par for the course at the time, or how it stood next to its contemporaries. Madonna's voice has obviously changed over the decades. She doesn't sound the same way she does in Ray of Light as she does here as a young woman, but listening to this album in full made me realize that Madonna has this baby girl voice that would go on to influence the inflections of other pop girls, which I thought was quite interesting. Obviously, the most popular track of the album is Holiday, which we still hear on the radio, and I actually really like that one. I like Lucky Star as well. Fun fact, the introduction of Lucky Star is also sampled in Carly Rae Jepsen's song Cut to the Feeling, which is another song I love. I also really like Think of Me, Physical Attraction. And so I think given that, I definitely like the second half of the album a lot more than the first half. So I'm gonna put this in Gems Found in the Mind. And then I listened to Tension by Kylie Minogue, which was released in 2023. Speaking of discography dives, I had put my Kylie Minogue listening project on hold sometime last year to focus on the 2024 releases, so it was high time that I restarted. At this point, I've already listened to X, Body Language, Fever, Aphrodite, and Tension 2 in that order. So for those who don't know, Kylie Minogue is an Australian singer-songwriter who started releasing music in 1989. I listened to Tension 2 last year when it came out, and when I listened to it, I had this sneaking suspicion that Tension would be superior to Tension 2 and that perhaps Tension 2 was just consisting of all the demos that didn't make it to the final version of the first Tension album. And after listening to Tension, I'm inclined to believe that initial hypothesis because this is just so much better than Tension 2. This was fun and vibrant. It's always very important to remember that Kylie lived through that initial wave of new disco pop in the 1990s and early 2000s with Fever. So it's really interesting for the culture to basically circle back to what she had already been doing successfully before these current pop girlies who are basically copying her were even a twinkle in their mother's eyes. My favorite songs on the album were pretty much most of them. Things We Do for Love is really good. Holding On to Now I enjoyed. One More Time, Vegas High is really good. 10 out of 10 is nice. However, this album is not really a personal favorite of mine from her. And while I enjoyed quite a lot of the songs of the album, I wasn't like particularly obsessed or fixated on any of them except maybe 10 out of 10. They're all memorable in their own way, but I don't know. It's kind of missing a specific spark that I have found in previous Kylie albums, so which is just like par for the course for somebody who has such a large discography like Kylie Minogue. I like how the album ended with the track Story, which is a very, I think it's very nice to end on a sentimental note. And the song kind of frames it as if it's about the fans who have been with Kylie this whole time. So I thought that was very cute. I also specifically listened to the deluxe version of Tension that features 3 extra songs that I thought were just okay. And since that there wasn't really a specific story or narrative that tied all of the tracks together, the extra songs didn't really add or took away from the album's overall quality. Like they could have taken it out or kept it in, like it wouldn't have mattered to me. Because again, I enjoyed quite a few of the songs here, I'm happy to put this in French Toast. And then I listened to Impossible Princess by Kylie Minogue. This was released in 1997. So I was still trying to wrap my head around trip hop, so I was reading through the Wikipedia page for it when my eyes landed on this fact that among those inspired by trip hop when it was first emerging, like Bjork and others, Kylie Minogue, of all people, was apparently inspired by trip hop. And I was like, dude, say less. I was dying to know. I could not wait to know what Kylie Minogue's interpretation of trip hop was going to sound like. I was so excited to find out because what I have learned so far from listening to Dummy and Mezzanine is that there is some kind of intention to unsettle or confront or challenge the listener, which is kind of the opposite of what Kylie Minogue's music does in my eyes. To me, Kylie is like the pillar of pop music. Like that's her legacy to me. But this 1997 project is also the oldest Kylie album that I've listened to. Like before I've listened to this, the oldest that I've listened to from her was Fever, which was in 2001. So this is 3 years after that. And the 3-year difference between Fever and Impossible Princess is like a huge chasm. Like this album, Kylie Minogue is completely unrecognizable to me. And that to me is so impressive because it takes like a very skillful artist to reinvent yourself basically. And that's what she did in between these projects. So obviously there's a lot of differences between this and quote unquote authentic trip hop. I mean, I just listened to Portishead, Dummy. Impossible Princess does not aim to unsettle its listener like real trip hop does, but it doesn't seem to create the addictive pop songs that I've come to know Kylie Minogue does best in. and none of them really reach that full potential that she often does in her work. And I think she knew that going into this project that she could not satisfy either camp. Like she couldn't satisfy the pop people. She's not going to satisfy the trip hop people either. So the task is, as the title says, a completely impossible. So the album befits the title of Impossible Princess. It's also really interesting because Kylie's distinct nasal tone voice adds another unique texture to the project, especially if you compare her voice with, say, Beth Gibbons' delivery in Dummy or the other female vocalists in Mezzanine. Those are purposefully soft and gentle to contrast the unsettlingness of the instrumentation, whereas Kylie's nasal voice is a little bit more piercing and confrontational, very memorable, which is a plus for pop music. And I don't want to say that Kylie's voice is actively working against like what trip hop is supposed to do, quote unquote, but it definitely adds again another layer of uniqueness to Impossible Princess. Obviously, some songs are, as the Wikipedia page says, influenced by trip hop, but some songs are more trip hop coded than others. As in, I can see which songs the influences shine through the most. For example, the first track, Too Far, has this relentless momentum that makes me feel like I'm being chased down a dark alleyway. Through the Years and Say Hey also has some features that I could recognize as trip hop coded. Don't ask me to elaborate. Meanwhile, tracks like Cowboy Style, Some Kind of Bliss, and Did It Again are a lot more like alternative rock than anything. The track I Don't Need Anyone is almost indie rock pop, but there are moments of popness like Breathe, which reminds me of the song Pure Shores by All Saints, and the song Drunk is the closest to a dance club track we can get from Kylie in this project. The lyrical content of the album is also super different from what Kylie has done in her later works at the very least. Kylie sets aside her typical simple declarations of love and passion in favor of embarking on a harrowing journey of self-discovery, best seen in songs like Jump and Limbo, which are to me are very memorable. It's like Kylie has gone into a cocoon to undergo metamorphosis, and she's invited us to see her dematerialize into goop, to rearrange herself into a pop princess butterfly 3 years later. I hope my metaphor makes sense. So yeah, I just found this to be a very interesting addition to Kylie Minogue's catalog, a project that I feel could only have been fueled by pure artistic ambition, because in all honesty, who asked for this? Trip hop fans? No. Did the pop fans ask for this? I don't think so. I think Kylie Minogue just really wanted to make an album like this. And in terms of like the context of Kylie Minogue's career, I have only heard of Kylie Minogue's music after this album was released. So, you know, for all I know, this was exactly what she was doing for a long time before she switched to dance music in the early 2000s. I'm not even sure whether this was like a direction she had been thinking of pursuing, or you could see the seeds of it in the music before, in the albums before this, because I haven't heard it yet. Given that this is considered her commercial flop, who knows what Kylie would have become if Impossible Princess was like a commercial hit? Would she have felt more encouraged to pursue a darker pop persona? Or would she have just kept being the pop princess that we know her today? Like maybe her legacy would have been completely different. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. But in the grand scheme of her discography, I must admit that I can't really see myself reaching for this album too many times, because when I think of Kylie Minogue, I want fun, addictive dance pop music. Impossible Princess is a very interesting and very unique project for sure, but it's not going to be in my heavy rotation. I'm not even sure if I have any favorite tracks. The closest is probably the track Some Kind of Bliss, because it's such a good example of this alternative rock female singer-songwriter vibe that we would eventually see more of in the early 2000s. But the most memorable tracks are definitely Jump, Limbo, and Dreams. I think these songs stood out to me as Kylie's songwriting trying its hardest to convey the thesis of the entire album, and I think doing a good job of it. I'm gonna put this in Gems Found in the Mind. And then I listened to Kiss My Lips by BoA. This was released in 2015. BoA is an absolute pioneer of K-pop. She debuted in 2000 and has been releasing music ever since. This is my first time listening to a full project from BoA, even though I've heard lots of her singles from the past, and her fingerprints are all over K-pop at this point. I obviously chose this album because it fit into my 2015 listening project, and oh my goodness, I think this album needs to be like assigned text for anyone who has even a passing interest in K-pop girl group music, because this is literally the perfect album, the perfect blueprint for girl group music. BoA and SM's style set precedent for what girl group albums would eventually become. It's a constellation of R&B, of dance music, of strong ballads. It's all in there. And it's no wonder that this is such a great album when among the producers listed in the track list are The Stereotypes, The Underdogs, JQ, and Dwayne Whitmore Jr., all of whom are big names in the Western pop music industry. SM really knew what they were doing with this one. This is basically the third album I've listened to from 2015 this month. I'm starting to wonder whether 2015 was just like the best year for pop music or something, or if this is again skewed by my subconscious nostalgia. Since I grew up with the pop sensibilities of the 2010s, then it would make sense that there is a lingering desire to relive that as I continue to grow older, or to seek that sound out even subconsciously. But regardless, I really love this album, and I think BoA is such like an amazing artist. My favorite songs are Fox and Who Are You and Kiss My Lips. Oh my goodness, such incredible songs. I also really loved Home, Love and Hate, and Green Light. Then I listened to XOXO by Camila Cabello. This was released in 2024. Camila Cabello is an American singer-songwriter who initially rose to prominence as a member of the girl group Fifth Harmony up until she departed in 2016. This album flopped, and many reasons could be pointed to what caused it. 2024 was just a really strong year for pop music in general, with so many personalities like Sabrina, Billy, Chapel, and Charli. It was hard for Camila to garner any attention. The first single from XOXO, I Love It, also suffered an unfortunate amount of admittedly very well-earned derision for being a less than great track. I'm gonna be honest, I only wanted to listen to the album because I was really intrigued by the Sean, Camila, Sabrina love triangle. The brainworms had just dug itself into my brain. Okay, bad news. My camera battery died, and I foresaw this because even though it's fully charged, it can only really record up for an hour, 50 minutes maximum, and I have been filming so we're gonna continue with my phone. Apologies for the drop in quality, but I really want to finish filming this tonight, and I don't want to charge my camera battery, especially because we only have 3 more albums to go, so we're gonna push through. So anyway, back to XOXO. I have a lot to say about this album that I do not have time for in this video, and that I have actually been planning to talk about in another separate dedicated video. But for now, I do want to kind of make this connection with XOXO and Caprisongs by FKA Twigs, which I listened to in the beginning of the month, because both albums feature songs made in response to and in the aftermath of a relationship that had hurt the artist. I am of course not saying that XOXO is at the same level as Caprisongs. That's definitely not what I'm saying. FKA Twigs is objectively on all levels a better artist than Camila, and the severity of their situations is of course completely different. FKA Twigs has suffered immensely and endured so much worse than Camila's situationship with Shawn Mendes, for example. However, what I will say is that both these albums share strong themes of confusion, of conflicting messy feelings, of missing a person, but knowing that that person had hurt you and fundamentally changed you as a person, but still missing them, and that person also representing a part of you or a part of your past that you wish to forget. And both albums also speak to the messy journey of reclaiming confidence and the struggle for self-esteem. These ideas were already kind of the back of my mind, but the thing that really crystallized the similarities between the two albums was this line in Hot Uptown, yes, the Drake song, lucky man who gets me in my prime. So prime implies the height of your success, or the height of you as a person. And while that can imply her career, Camila Cabello's career, I can't help but also frame it as like the prime of her youth. She's 27 years old. She spent her 20s basically ravaged by fame and by this relationship. And it reminded me of the track in Caprisongs, Oh My Love, where one of the voices, the spoken word voices, say at the end of the song, they just want to steal your youth. And so, in the context of listening to both albums in the same time period, I definitely feel like I arrived at the conclusion of this album's purpose much easier than other listeners did. I do not think that XOXO is a flawless execution, but I think that it did what Camila wanted it to do, which is to be a place to purge out all these negative feelings and to say goodbye to a version of herself. For all of XOXO's clumsy execution, I can see the intention and the conviction in it. So yes, in a way, I did actually enjoy the album. Not just because of like the meaning of what Camila was trying to convey, but also like the actual songs themselves that I will kind of go into deeper detail with in the future. But for now, I actually like it enough to put it in Gems Found in the Mind, contrary to, popular opinion. Yeah, if you want to see me defend my liking the album, you're just gonna have to subscribe to the channel and keep an eye out for that video in the future. And then I listened to So Close to What by Tate McRae. This was released in 2025, and I've been waiting for this album to come since last year. So Tate McRae is a Canadian singer, songwriter, and dancer. Now I'm gonna be honest, I really did not enjoy Think Later, which was her second studio album released in 2023. I have a video on my channel where I did not enjoy Think Later, and so I'm not just like saying this for like a better story or whatever. I'm genuinely a converted Tate McRae stan. What really convinced me was the first single to promote this album, which is It's Okay, I'm Okay. Originally, even that song I was a bit like whatever, but like over time it just burrowed itself into my brain. Tate McRae, get behind me. Partnering up with producer Ryan Tedder for this is the best thing she's ever done. I think she just sounds amazing. And as much as I want to continue praising Tate McRae, this video is already long enough. So we're gonna put this in your endless material, and I'm gonna like talk about her more in the future. So please keep an eye out for that. The last album that I listened to this February of 2025, Loose by Nelly Furtado. This is released in 2006. Nelly Furtado is a Canadian singer and songwriter. If you're not online, there's this new slang going around in music fan spaces called stealing nachos or reheated nachos, which is basically a way to describe the phenomena of an artist, usually a musician, copying or imitating a previous artist's sound. This phrase definitely has like a very derogatory tone to it because you're basically implying that one person is like stealing somebody else's style. But I feel like there's a way to articulate the same sentiment, just not in the same mean way. In my opinion, stealing nachos implies that the artists are active contemporaries, i.e. Camila Cabello tried to steal Charli XCX and Rosalia's nachos but failed. So that's how I would use that in a sentence. Whereas reheating nachos implies that a present-day artist is reusing a specifically older artist's work. An example would be, I don't know, Diet Pepsi is reheated early Lana Del Rey nachos. Now, if you don't listen to pop music, none of this is going to make sense, but stay with me here. This is where Tate McRae falls in, because literally since she released Greedy in, I want to say 2022, she has been, even though reheating nachos wasn't in vogue at the time that Greedy was released, people were already talking about her revitalizing this sound that Britney Spears pioneered back in the early 2000s or whatever. Specifically with this new album, it's been said that she's reheating Britney Spears nachos, Pussycat Dolls nachos, and Nelly Furtado nachos. Now, personally, I was actually confused as to why Nelly Furtado was being cited more often than Britney Spears and Pussycat Dolls, given that I actually thought that Britney Spears and Pussycat Dolls were clearer influences than Nelly Furtado, until I did a simple Google search. And Nelly Furtado is also Canadian, and so is Tate McRae. So that's why people were comparing them to each other, which I'm like, okay, whatever. But yeah, all this discourse about reheating nachos spurred me into actually going directly to the restaurant and ordering a fresh serving, which is why I decided to go and listen to this album, because this is the album that has all the songs that people are claiming Tate McRae is trying to reheat the nachos of. And you know what? I would reheat these nachos too, because this is such a good album. Songs produced by legendary producer Timbaland, resulting in absolute generational hits like Man Eater, Promiscuous, and my personal favorite, Say It Right. Nelly Furtado oozes so much charisma and confidence, it's completely infectious. But as much as the party songs are addictive, Furtado also has this amazing talent for emotional, pleading vocal deliveries that makes songs like Say It Right, Showtime, and Wait For You so enticing. I'd say that I pretty much like all of the songs in the album, but the weakest song for me is Glow. It's just a bit too repetitive to listen to outside of the context of the club. It's the kind of lyrical nonsense that can easily put you in a trance, but isn't substantial enough to exist outside of its purpose. Otherwise, this is such a real treasure of an album. Super in love, super big fan, love it. I'm gonna put this in French Toast. It's the absolute highest I can put it in. So yes, that's all I've listened to in February of 2025. Let's look at the entire thing one more time. So in total, I listened to 15 albums, which is the most albums I will allow myself to listen to in a month, because I find that if I listen to more than that, there's a real danger of me not paying enough attention to each album to make informed enough opinions on them. It also makes getting a rough estimate of how many albums I listen to in a year a lot easier. And so here is a pie chart of the decades the albums that I listen to fall under, so you can see how it's shaping out to be in 2025. This month was really good for listening to music for me. I learned a lot about new songs and new artists and new genres. I also enjoyed a lot of the picks that I listened to this month. Moving forward, the main things I am going to keep track of in terms of my listening habits for the rest of the year is one, albums released in 2015. Two, I'm going to keep a close eye on the albums that were suggested in the comments section. I promise I'm not going to take as long as I did the last. And then 3, I'm gonna focus on my discography dives. Obviously, I've got my Kylie Minogue discography dive, as well as my Madonna discography dive that I've just started now. But there's obviously a couple that I've been meaning to. I want to start doing Lady Gaga and maybe FKA Twigs for a category for albums which I call preparation albums. So they're albums that I listen to in preparation for something, whether it's the upcoming release of an artist or an upcoming concert that they have. So for example, Jane Remover's upcoming project Revenge Seekers is coming up, and she also has her side project Venturing, I think already released. And then Day 6 is having a concert in April, so I need to familiarize myself with their music. And finally, 5th, 2025 releases. Obviously, I need to keep my finger on the pulse of what the music is out. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. This has just been a really long video, I think the longest I've done in my entire time reviewing music, and it's just because I just had so much to say about the albums that I ended up picking. Yeah, please let me know what you want me to listen to in the comments section. If you want to see more of my work, please subscribe so you don't miss out on what I post in the future. My social media links are down in the description alongside my Patreon page and my Ko-fi page if you want to support me financially. Otherwise, I can't wait to share my love with you next time. I will see you soon. Bye. Oh my god, I can't wait to go to sleep.